Overnight, Russia used the Oreshnik ballistic missile as part of a massive overnight strike on Ukraine. 4 people were killed, 25 others injured in Kyiv, the capital, on Thursday night. Very loud booms could be heard for several hours, and the sky was alight with explosions. Let's get some more detail on this particular ballistic missile and what it is and what the use of it perhaps tells us. Dominic Suran joins me, Head of Special Projects at Nordic Air Defence, and we'll speak in a moment to Robert Fox about some wider issues, the Defence Editor of the Evening Standard. Dominic, first of all, thank you for joining me. What were your first thoughts when you saw that this particular ballistic missile had been used?
Yeah, so this isn't the first time that the Russians have used this specific missile. It's a hypersonic missile, so it goes at or faster than Mach 5, which is 5 times the speed of sound. The scariest thing about this is actually the time to react. All air defense is complicated. All of it is hitting a bullet with a bullet. But when things are going this fast and are highly maneuverable, they're incredibly difficult to defend against. This specific missile is actually intended to be used with nuclear payloads. The Russians, of course, didn't do this the last time they used this missile, and they didn't use it this time either. So I see it more as kind of a demonstration of force and saber rattling. But nonetheless, it's a very scary capability. So all around, not great.
Like a reminder of the toys, quotes, that they have to play with if they need to. When you talked about it being very maneuverable, just explain what you mean by that, and in actual warfare.
Yeah, so in actual warfare, one of the things is just the speed that this is going. Some of the slower flying Orlan vehicles or the Shaheeds, which have unleashed tremendous amounts of damage in Ukraine. What's so scary about these is there is a way to do air defense. You need to detect, you need to track, you need to identify, and you need to counter. When things are flying and you have 20 or 30 minutes to do this, because you can see their trajectory, there's kind of a range of layered defense that you can use against them. When something's moving this fast through the sky, it's not just a matter of hitting it, it's a matter of going through the entire chain to even be able to detect it and to be able to respond effectively. And I think this is especially terrifying because it was done, so close to a NATO border. It struck in Lviv, which is, a hop, skip, and a jump from Poland. So I think this kind of, not only was this trying to cause damage in Ukraine, it was also a reminder that this capability can be used throughout the European continent. If one of these was to be launched, against any of the major capitals in Europe, it would be a sub 15-minute engagement. And I think most of Europe is not prepared for that.
Gosh, it can go a long way then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, clearly not a military expert. It could go a long way then. Well, that matters, doesn't it? Vladimir Putin himself has said that this particular attack was in response to a drone attack on a residence of Putin's. Do you think it was also a bit of saber rattling, as you said, at the end of this particular week, given what's been going on in Paris?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the Ukrainians are, first and foremost, to be very clear and take credit, for their victories against Russia. I think of things like Operation Spiderweb, where they deployed, hundreds of drones, beyond the Russian border and caused tremendous amounts of damage. I believe the Ukrainians, when they say that this, they didn't do this attack on Putin, I think peace talks are ongoing with the United States. I think we're, in the middle of the winter war right now and everything. So I think, Russia is grasping at straws to try and kind of show that they have advanced capability. So I think this was just kind of a shadow justification for Putin to demonstrate the capability.
Dominic, thank you for speaking to me today. Dominic Suran, Head of Special Projects at Nordic Air Defence. Listening to that and joining me now is Robert Fox, Defence Editor of The Standard. Good afternoon to you, Robert. Thanks for joining me again.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
What's your assessment of at the end of this particular week, both with that missile attack and what we learned earlier in the week about the UK's plans?
Well, as we heard, the missile attack was a demonstration. It was a warning sign not only to Zelensky, but it was to the EU, weaseling away, working away, worming away at splitting EU, Europe, the European NATO allies from America, but pretty much on the back foot. This is Putin now. Venezuela is bad, bad news for him. The hijacking of the tankers, even worse news, because that's the way he needs to get the bulk of his oil out, through the so-called shadow fleet. And worst news of all, potentially, is losing an ally in Iran, which may be what we're looking at, a collapse of a regime, and a regime which has proved useful in providing drones, but also stacks of conventional ammunition, of which the Russians are very greedy. But the thing is that has to be said, when we're going to come on to boots on the ground, we're nowhere near a peace talk. I'm even more skeptical than the previous speaker about it. There's a lot of blah, 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 but there's nothing realistically going on, because you look at all the rhetoric, you look at all the spin that comes from the Kremlin, from Putin, even the famous attack on the residents, which almost nobody believes, and the Russians double down on it because they know nobody believes in it. So, you know, it's a tough one.
Well, that it was a Russian job.
No, it was a general attack on very well identified facilities in the Novgorod region.
Right.
There happens to be a Putin resident. For God's sake, there are Putin residences all over the place, funnily enough. But it certainly wasn't targeted. And I think that even Trump is pretty skeptical, despite Putin phoning him for 75 minutes to say, look, they've attacked my home, but there we are.
Can I break down some of what you said and dig into it a little bit? Let's go back to Venezuela. That shadow fleet would include that oil tanker that the Americans boarded with the help of the RAF, it looks like. Not looks like, it was with the help of the RAF. What was going on there? Explain that Russian-Venezuelan relationship.
Well, Venezuela has been getting oil to China, but there's also a complication that the ship involved, which was the Bella One, then it changed its name, mid-North Atlantic Ocean.
And and was reflagged.
Yes, which apparently is technically quite difficult to do and legally dubious. But it was also getting sanctioned oil from Iran to go to mainly to China. Trump has a thing about these illegal, these illicit, these unidentifiable ghost or shadow ship transactions. There are about 1,000 tankers, all told, globally. They're unregistered, unrecognized. And of course, one of the things that the Venezuela strategy fits into it, that Trump wants to do, he wants to be the dominant hydrocarbon superpower. There are others around, there are OPEC, but he is really saying, if I can command all these resources, particularly throughout the American continent, described in his latest strategy document as our, capital O, our hemisphere, then he wants to run that. This is where he comes absolutely head-to-head with Russia. It's where, as I've written in a previous piece, a frenemy, as he is with Putin, actually becomes an enemy. But it's a funny thing. It's a thing that Trump is really serious about, as he is peculiarly, and has been for 8 years and more, he's serious about things like Greenland. And Greenland is strategically necessary. Probably isn't in the terms that he has.
But in real terms, he has all that's necessary. Well, it's strategically and for security, Greenland isn't stopping America from using Greenland for its strategic safety.
But I'd like to point out, I mean, there's a marvellous podcast interview in the current New Statesman with Fiona Hill, Dr. Fiona Hill, about this. And when she was working for the administration, she'd worked for several administrations as a technical expert, and she said that Trump was absolutely obsessed about Greenland, and obsessed about a thing which has only just come out from her testimony, that he actually talked or suggested through channels that, well, if Putin would lay off Venezuela as a specific area of interest, which indeed it was both for Russia and for China, then I'll lay off Ukraine. that, let's play Chinese checkers with this. We'll swap little bits of the world between each other. It is kind of a crazy notion, isn't it? And of course, Europe and NATO, as you hinted in your introduction, are absolutely nowhere in this.
But also, gosh, can I go back to that, what Fiona Hill revealed there? If you lay off Venezuela, i.e. the oil I'd like from Venezuela, if you lay off Venezuela, I'll back off Ukraine. That must make Zelensky put his head in his hands, and the rest of us.
It must indeed. But what it should do, and I don't think it's happening too much in Downing Street and Whitehall, we should be putting our heads into, well, wrapping them in very, very cold towels and really thinking our position. Because I think that's what we really should come on to now. In your interview, sorry, I shouldn't tell you that.
No, please do. I'm inviting your thoughts. You fire away.
It's that, all this stuff, as you said, about boots on the ground and we'll do security hubs, get real. We need a real defence and security policy. Because as your previous speaker hinted, by golly, if the Oreshnik really worked, and if he wanted to fire, he could sure fire an Oreshnik only 2 or 3 of these hypersonic missiles onto the UK, onto the east coast of England and Scotland.
We've got no air defence.
We've got absolutely nothing to deal with it. And that's why, we've had this very glossy strategic defence review in June. We had this promise we're going to go up to 3.5% of GDP spent on defence by 2035, by the way, Shia. And most of the promises of the real money accompanying that document were for long after this administration of Starmer will have gone. You know.
Is that the definitive defence review, or is there a final version to come? Remind me. Or that was
I always think of Dr. David Owen, Lord Owen in his part. He always loved, do you remember, I never knew what it meant really, but it's a funny thing, fudge and mudge. And I think there's a lot of fudge and mudge because we were going to spend all this money in defence, and suddenly we hear from Rachel Reeves and the Accounts Department and the Treasury, and they've got their dads all over defence at the moment, saying, no, you've got a black hole which has suddenly appeared in defence all over again already of 28 billion. So we're not putting money in it. We've got about as much equipment, and it's pretty old, to supply properly an army of 20,000 or under. So how are we talking about we can send even 7,500 soldiers to look after the peace in Ukraine if there's a peace deal? We are absolutely in, and it's Alice through the looking glass. It's everything in reverse.
You seem to be saying we are naked on the day of an attack.
Yeah. And I am also saying we need to think again. We need to think much more modestly. We don't want to think about here and now. I won't be around. I don't want to think about the 2030s. We've got real problems now, which this government particularly is not engaging in. And it's saying, well, the focus groups and the polls tell us that the young people are not interested and they don't want to fight. No, as a leading government, you should point out the very, very complex array of threat that we're under now. And that's where I think they're absolutely failing.